So this is a video that I've been thinking about doing for a while. I'm not quite too sure how it's going to be, but, well, let's get started. I tend to talk about the art of driving. Driving is an art. It's a practice discipline. And in the strictest sense of it, it really is. If you watch a lot of the race car drivers, Indy 1, Formula, those guys that do all those road rallies and all that, they are truly artists. They're at the top of their game. So, in the trucking industry, why aren't we as drivers at the top of our game? Been thinking a lot about this lately, and I've come to a conclusion. The average age of the truck driver out here is something like 56. And you're like, well, there's all these young guys. Well, these young guys are all washing out at 23 and 24. And a lot of guys are starting new careers. So what happened? Well, I'm not going to blame the truck drivers. Not completely, but yeah. So to help illustrate this, I have the radar unit out, mainly because the dash cluster died again, but I do have a full tank. I had to take a break from doing my taxes. I think I got the gist of it done, but I was starting to go nuts, and I don't need to start smoking that much again. So I decided to take a break. I might finish it up tonight or tomorrow morning, but I don't know if I'll talk about taxes this year. I've talked about it a couple years in a row, but I might run over some numbers, but that's for another video. So let's talk about driving. Now, to preface this, I'm not going to get political. If you've watched my channel long enough, some of you may have figured out where I kind of lean to. Most of you probably don't care, and I don't care to tell anybody because it's my business and I won't bring that here. I want people from all walks, lives, races, religions, and everything to take this information for what it is. Because trucking is not belong to a political party. It belongs to all of us truck drivers. Let me just get that out of the way. And forgive me because I will be talking a little bit about politics, but I'm not gonna get side with one side or the other, because idiocy crosses the aisle. Anyhow, what I've noticed lately is that with trucking going just absolutely crazy like it has been, and the general attitudes out here, a lot of the old timers have given up. And there's a reason for that, and that goes back to the 90s and early 2000s, when truck drivers still from the, deregulation days were still out here. The old owner ops, they knew how to do it. And they knew how to do it well. And they were the ones training the next generation of driver. And when a lot of these mega carriers came into play, in the 80s, it was J.B. Hunt, Schneider, and Swift. But they blossomed in the 80s and then blew up in the 90s. And in the 90s, though, it wasn't so much Swift as it was U.S. Express. U.S. Express started something that we've never recovered from. Well, along with Warner. Warner started the E-Log. And from what I've been told about the E-Log, it was so terrible that Warner wanted to ditch it, but they had invested so much money into it that the powers that be wouldn't let them do it. They were going to make it work. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's the story. I don't know, but from every driver I've ever talked to from that era, it was the worst thing ever. I mean, if the wind shifted just right, and your truck was sitting in the wrong part of the lot there in Lincoln, you could bounce between towers and it would show you movement, and nobody would fix it. You'd just be down for another 10. So yeah, it was a nasty time and a nasty place to be. Let's get back to U.S. Express. In the mid to late 90s, the auto shift started to be a real popular thing. And a lot of these companies, there was a company called Lisa Motor Lines. They ended up getting bought by FFE. FFE went on a buying spree in the early 2000s, but that's another story. But a lot of these companies, well, like Lisa, they'd get you your permit and your license, and they just, as they were training you, you'd just be hauling freight with a trainer. You know, it was sink or swim with them. Well, U.S. Express realized that if they put a driver in an auto shift and didn't have to teach them how to shift, they could get guys driving a lot quicker. They could shortcut the system. Well, they set up a precedence to where all of a sudden it was all about shortcutting the system. Into the mid-2000s, into the teens, it got really bad there for a while. And unfortunately, government had to step in. Now, as we all know from those who lived through the Ruby Ridge era, that the government is here to help. So what ended up happening was they had to start imposing a lot of new safety standards and regulations and rules, because what ended up happening was CDL mills happened. They started basically selling CDLs. So not only did they start selling CDLs, they started these schools to where they just started inflating the price, because there was a lot of government money involved. So they started shoving as many kids through these schools as they could because they wanted the money. A lot of it was grant money. And so all they had to do with third-party testing is get them to pass a test. That's it. There's no driving, there's no street, there's no pass the test. Pass the test, give you your license, kick you out the door. And there were some of these guys that were doing this in the period of like a week, you know, and they were cramming these guys 18 hours a day to get their class time in. I mean, it got ridiculous. I knew one gal that went to work for Covenant, and she had to do so many hours of class time, and they crammed it dang near all in a week. Within 4 days of getting her permit, she was on the road hauling freight. Yeah. So that kind of tells the story. So when you start thinking in terms like that, you start seeing how we got where we are today. So let's talk about what the unintended consequence of all that is. So every 5 or 6 years, some idiot politician will have a brand new idea that they haven't tried in at least 4 months or years. Depends on the politician. So the speed limiter one is one that always comes back. It doesn't work anywhere, not even in California. I remember in Illinois when it was that way. It was so bad and so dangerous in Illinois, even the cops wouldn't enforce it. They were like, as long as you're in the right lane and you're not being an idiot, they will leave you alone. And California is pretty much like that too. But I think in a lot of cases out there, they're kind of more or less forced to deal with it. But I digress. So when I started driving, there was a lot of split speeds. Arkansas, Indiana, Ohio, Oregon, California, Washington, Montana. I mean, there was a lot more split speeds than people realize. But that comes out of the 55 days, when the states were allowed to regulate their speeds. But that's another story. So guys were like, well, if trucks drive slower, maybe it'll be more safe. Well, as we learned from the 55 days, slowing everybody down doesn't solve anything. It just jams up the road. So now we're dealing with this again. So we're going to go take a trip on the interstate, And we're just going to show you what speed limiters and adaptive cruise control and what all this does. Because I'll tell you right now, it's a lot worse than people are leading on. When you have all of these driver's aids, people are not paying attention to what they're doing. And that right there is the problem. You ever have somebody come up next to your truck and suddenly just slow down and pace you? Well, look at the car in front of them. They're exactly 5 car lengths ahead, and they're doing the same speed limit. Why? Because those people are not paying attention to what they're doing. Kansas is getting ready to go cashless on their tolls. Yeah, kind of amazing for a highway system and a toll road that was supposed to have been free in about 1985. So they're going to basically fire all the employees and go completely cashless because, well, you know, yeah. So we see a car pacing an Amazon truck right here. You know, he's not paying attention. Probably neither is the Amazon driver, really. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. We're finding a cluster of cars and trucks here. So what caused that? Well, I'm going to tell you right now what caused that was cruise control. Well, that and governed trucks, but let me get off this bridge before I get arrested. Now, yeah. Now, here's one thing that they don't talk about on Facebook, and I know a lot of you will not believe me, but every truck built in the last 25 years comes from the factory governed. They have to. The insurance will not allow that. Insurance, warranties, all that, they all come, and usually it's about, I know with the Volvos we had back in the early 2000s, it came governed at 87 and a half is what it came governed at. And you could raise it. I mean, it was easy to get in the computer back then and crank that thing up. We all did. But one of the problems that we're having with governed trucks right now is you can govern every truck at 65 miles an hour, and they're all going to be running at a different rate of speed. So if they impose speed limiters like they're trying to, which is ridiculous because 65-70% of these trucks out here are all governed at 65, 68, and 72. What's going to end up happening is you're going to create mobile parking lots wherever you go. I mean, the interstate will just become a gigantic parking lot. It's only going to be as fast as the slowest truck. So let's see if we can, I'm going to pop my radar unit out and just hang it over the bridge here and see if we can actually just start seeing what some of these trucks are running. You know, technology is wonderful and there's a lot of good things that happen through it. But, you know, part of what happened with all these laws and legalities, I mean, you see it on billboards, especially in Indiana. I see it on commercials all the time. There's a law group in Wichita that big rig wrecks, they used to have billboards that would say, truck drivers have deep pockets. I mean, they were encouraging people to go after truckers. I mean, it was a literal, they encouraged it. So what ended up happening was a lot of, you know, accidents, guys were set up. I mean, there's a lot of setups. And this is why I tell people it's so important to get cameras. You know, I remember seeing a statistic a few years back saying once they started installing cameras in semi-trucks, the accident rate against truck drivers dropped 80%. Oh, excuse me. Because, and if you've noticed, since cameras and all these systems have started happening, a lot of that's gone away. These lawyers have had to go out and figure out a way to be a shyster to somebody else. But it's still happening a lot. And with the gap between the new guys coming in, and like I said, the average age of a truck driver being like 54, 58, something like that, that tells me that we got about 5 to 6 years before this industry collapses completely, because the new guys and these companies are just not pulling it together. But we'll go out and look at some speed. I may have a golden opportunity. There's a bull hauler in front of me. Let's find out if he's got a radar detector. Okay, there he is. So let's get a little bit out of town and see what happens. Nope, gave up on that quest. It's a Hogan driver, and they're about as hardcore as vanilla ice cream. So, yeah, let's go out here and just check some speeds, and we'll wrap this up, and I'll just kind of get to my point. You know, you hear a lot of guys talk about how vehicles are an extension of themselves. You just don't ask a feminist that, because she'll tell you what part of the extension it is. Anyhow, if you sit there and you've driven as much as I have, and a lot of you guys have, you're going to notice that guys make subconscious movements when they look, when they drift, when they're getting ready to go, when they speed up, when they slow down. And this is part of the art of driving, is being able to read traffic. And, you know, it's an art. It takes a while to learn, but for the most part, you'd be about 65, 70%. Not too bad, I guess, but you just have to start learning how to, basically, it's when people call reading the room, that's what you're doing. You're reading the room. So you're just trying to figure out where you are. Now, you always have to be driving defensively because, well, people are impulsive and stupid. And if any of you ever driven in Jackson, Mississippi on a Friday night, you'd know that. Or for that case, a Monday morning. Anytime. I was in Mississippi right after that ice storm a couple weeks ago. Yeah, that was fun. It was a 0 out of 5 stars. I don't recommend, because if you think those people can't drive on dry pavement, you ought to see them on ice. It's a whole new bag there. Now, before we start too far down this rabbit hole, you have to realize that the average driver is impulsive, impatient, and generally just a gaslighting narcissist. So, if you want to test this theory, I'll tell you how to do it. It's actually a lot of fun. So basically, the general perception with the general public is not just that trucks are slow. They automatically assume that. Never mind the fact that you can dust them pretty much, you can dust any of these cars out here with these trucks. A lot of them you can. But not only that, it just, even in my car, I'll show you. We're moving at a pretty good clip right now. A lot of these people don't want you in front of them, but they don't want to be behind you either. Never mind the fact that you're moving. So, if you get one of these idiots, the best thing to do is just match their speed. Now, hear me out. And just start creeping up on them about a half mile an hour faster than they're going. And when they start catching up, just move just a half mile an hour faster. And then and before you know it, you're doing 10 to 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, and they're not giving up. So, this is how I get around things like this. I just, I do that. I let them get in front of me, and then I don't so much tailgate them, I pace them behind them for a ways. And then I just slowly back off. And you know what? They're so worried about me passing them that they'll stress themselves out and kick their own butt to stay in front of me. And I can set my cruise and let them drive out of my life. It's a solid plan. And believe it or not, it actually does work. So now that we've stopped, let's put this to stationary. And we'll start. Yep, there's the Hogan truck. Yep. So we're just going to sit here for a minute and talk about, well, people. People are impulsive. They're impatient. You're in their way. I came across this the other day. And don't get me wrong, I may have had a little bit to do with it. Imagine that. There's a couple companies out there that remained unnamed that I have a special dark place in my heart for. One of them is a particular trash hauling company that basically tears up our road, dumps trash, and they drive red trucks and they're out of Illinois. But they got a bunch of day cabs and they haul things to the landfill. And I don't know where they find these drivers, but they need to dig the well deeper. But that being said, you have to have a general understanding of who you're dealing with. You can read the road and read the room and do everything you want like that, but at the end of the day, you are responsible for you. That's just it. You cannot change anybody else's. You can't change anybody else's things here. Nobody's going to care. Nobody cares. So you have to take care of you. Yeah, that's the actual speed. He is getting ready to hit the interstate at 30. That's also a problem. Truthfully, all of this safety stuff that they put in these trucks now, the braking programs, the driver assist, all that, has taken skill away from the truck drivers. It's taken the ability to drive the truck. I want to take all of mine off the truck, but the insurance company wants me to leave it on. I do have it all turned off, but for some reason, I can't get a couple things turned off. But I've had these safety devices actually dang near cause accidents. I had to dynamite the brakes in the middle of I-29 one time. I've had them dynamite the brakes going around to Cloverleaf because it didn't like what I was doing. So what happens when you get all this collision avoidance stuff in these cars and these trucks and all this adaptive cruise and stuff? Theoretically, it's supposed to make the road safe. It's supposed to get everybody moving at the same rate, the same speed, and just everybody's spaced out beautifully. And then you throw humans into the mix, and then it all goes south. The problem is that people are involved. That's the long and short of it. You put people in the mix, and then emotion gets involved. And you start really taking these driver aids and these collision avoidance systems end up becoming a hindrance more than a help. You're trying to replace skill with technology. You can have all the talent in the world, but if there's no skill involved, your talent is worthless. Your talent will only take you so far. Your skill takes you the rest of the way. And when you take the skill out of it, it's no good. You're just no good to anybody. You have to develop your skill. And with all these driver's aids and collision avoidance stuff, they're trying to streamline the process and substitute technology for skill. And it's failing. So I sit here and I'm watching the speeds, and most of the trucks are moving about 65 to 68. The cars are moving 70 to 75. So here's the thing, is we don't need speed limiters. That guy that got on the road at 21 miles an hour, he's about 75, 80 years old. And he was probably on this when this was a 2-lane. But truthfully, as much as I hate to say this, if he's going to be doing that, he needs to be on that road just right over there that goes the same distance. When you have traffic that's moving at 2 different rates of speed, it's dangerous. You've seen it on the interstate when you get one guy who's paying for his gas with a credit card and going broke, and he's wanting to do 57 in a 70. You see it all the time. You get out there on Highway 54 going to Tucumcari, and everybody's flowing except that one moron who wants to hold up 3 miles of traffic because he's doing 57 and a 65. You know, it's just, speed limiters are going to be very detrimental. They do not help. If I've learned anything from having driven in the era of the 55 mile an hour and driven in the 55 split speed with semis, I'm going to tell you right now, it does not work. It just doesn't work because the human factor. You know, yeah, you can write tickets, you can write this, you can write that, and you know what? If states want to do it, that's fine. Let the states do it. Let the states have the ability through the federal government. The federal government said the states can do their own speed. But we don't need the government to tell us how fast we can go. Sitting here watching these two meatheads battle it out, and you know what? We have enough trouble. We have enough trouble with trucks doing that versus cars, and the cars have the same problems that trucks do. They put their cruises on, they don't pay attention to what they're doing. One guy's running 70 with bald tires, one guy's running 70 with new tires, and they're just creeping on each other. You know, there's a 2 to 3 mile an hour difference depending on your tires. My tires are wore out on my truck, there's a 2 mile an hour difference. So if it says I'm doing 72, I'm really doing 70. But you kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt here. So that's that's the truck there. He was doing 62. The other trucks I saw just a minute ago, they were doing 68 and 68. So what's the point of all this? It's probably been, I don't know how long the video is going to be after I edit it, but we've gone through this quite a bit. I haven't seen any speed higher than 77, 78, and I was doing that. Actually, there was an 81 because, well, the gal was racing me, and I was having a good time. But as I'm looking at all the speeds here, the trucks aren't the ones speeding, guys. They're not. True, they do 70, 75. Owner-operators can go faster, you know. But even the owner-operators I've seen here are doing 68 to 70. And you're paying for your own fuel, you do that. So the majority of these guys aren't. And this is kind of my point, is that of all the things that everybody's arguing about, speed limiters, trucks aren't the problem. Keeping an eye out for cops, because eventually if I stay here too long, someone's going to see me or call me in. But yeah, trucks aren't the problem. It's everything combined. You add a truck, you add a couple cars, you add guys not paying attention. It's a recipe for disaster. Basically what it comes down to is much like cigarettes, trucks are an easy mark for profit. They are. And it comes from an outdated idea that they're still pushing. That trucks are big and slow and dangerous and scary, and truck drivers are rich. According to my 1099, I made a lot of money. According to what my net was, no, that's part of the reason I haven't bought a lot of stuff lately. I'm just as broke as everybody, and I don't make any money doing this. That's pretty much my opinion, is that trucks are just an easy mark for profit. Insurance companies regulate way too much. They'll hire a brand new guy with no experience rather than an experienced guy that had one bad day. You know, they change all the rules with CSA. Guys that have been clean and sober for 15 or 20 years are suddenly finding DUIs that are 25 years old on their record, and suddenly they're uninsurable anymore. You know, it's idiocy like that. We're just being over-regulated to the breaking point. And I'll tell you this, this is not a joke. If the speed limiter law passes and I'm forced to regulate the truck that I pay for, that I pay taxes on, that I pay the maintenance on, that I own outright, I'll quit. We're done. I'll burn the thing to the ground. I might just do that. Have a big Trucker Dave's quitting trucking, and we'll just light the truck on fire. That'd be a heck of a day. Nothing like watching $72,000 go up in smoke. But, hey. But yeah, seriously, if that happens, I'm going to be forced to quit. And find something else to do. It's unsustainable what's going on right now. And this is why I've always said we need a little representation. So whether you're a company guy or an owner-operator, or a company guy that's aspiring to be an owner-operator, or you're getting completely bent over with a lease, you need to stand up against this. Because this is just something they keep bringing around, and they know eventually they'll get it done. Guys that said e-logs would never happen, they got it done. They said CSA would never happen, they got it done. They have everything they've said that would never happen, they've done. And this will eventually happen. And they're actually talking about trying to raise the insurance rate, the liability, from $750,000 to $5 million. And that'll reject, but they'll raise it. They may bring it to $1 million, but then over the years they're going to keep raising it. Guys, they want the owner-operators out of business. Why do you think they busted the union out? Why do you think they wanted to destroy the Teamsters? And you know, I'm not a big union guy, but I'll tell you this. They destroyed the Teamsters because they wanted to replace it with themselves. Don't believe me? What has the government done? They've taken what was a business. Yeah, the Teamsters had a pretty tight control, but the government replaced them in a very Machiavellian way, and now they're squeezing harder than ever. So, speed limiters aren't the answer. So, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. See you next video.